Well, hello. Hope you can all hear me. As you can see, my webcam has decided not to work at the moment, but never mind. I might get that going in a little while. No, I've not bottled out of the Scottish weather. The Scottish weather bottled out of me. Welcome to the Future of Speaking. This is based upon something that I gave to the London chapter. And we've got a few people still joining us, so it'll probably be another minute or so before I actually get going. But the real reason for doing this is that I think the world of speaking is undergoing probably the fastest, most dramatic change that it has ever undergone in terms of professional speaking, and I think that we as speakers need to be prepared for those changes, and those speakers that are prepared for those changes will do well in the future, and those who aren't will clearly not do so well. So hopefully what I'm going to do here is help you do better in your speaking in the future. But to begin with, what I'd like to do is start with some questions. And the way I want you to deal with any kinds of questions you have is to use the chat feature, which you'll see on the right hand side, as some of you will have already seen. Stuart has asked a question suggesting I've bottled out of the Scottish weather, but if you look on the right hand side of your screen, you will see a public chat area, and at the very bottom of the screen a tiny little box where you can type in. So if you want to type in any questions as we go through in that bottom right hand box, then that's the place where you would type something in. I'll see it come up on my screen, and then I'll be able to answer it either by speaking with you or by typing something back. So why don't we have a go at that? Why don't you type something in, and we'll see what questions you're going to type away. So if you all have a go at typing a question in now, we'll see something happening. It can be as inane as what's the weather like in Reading, where I am at the moment. So a few of you can ask a question or two now. I'll give you a second or two to do that. Okay, so shouldn't listen to to Stuart, apparently. Well, I'll leave you and Andy to argue amongst yourselves. If you don't want to use the public chat, then you can send me a private message. If you look on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see either your name, if you've already entered your name, or it'll say attendee number, whatever it is. And what you can do there is to ask me a question privately if you wanted to say something, or there was some technical issue or something that you needed to contact me about, but you didn't want the other people to hear. Then you can send a message directly to me privately. On the left-hand side, you'll see my name, and you can get hold of me there. Now, we can already see the questions coming through. Can speakers still make a living from webinars rather than live speaking? We might find out a bit later on, mightn't we? But I think that that is certainly an area that we're going to cover. And as for breaking into the world of speaking, I think that the first steps that you need to do, we're also going to cover that as we go through this, because I think what speakers need to do in the future suggests a way of starting and getting things going. So as we go through, if there's anything in particular that you want to ask me, just type away in that right hand side. So why don't we get going now with the meat of what we're going to do. What I want to do is to cover these 5 key topics. I'm going to look at some facts and figures about the speaking industry as they have changed and as things are going forward in the future, the predictions that are being made about the speaking industry. I'm going to look at what events organisers and meeting planners say they want from speakers. I'm going to look at some of the changes that are happening within the events industry, and then I'm going to suggest a couple of models for being a professional speaker, and then the options that you might have for your future as a professional speaker. So the first thing then is to look at some facts and figures, and inevitably the economic crisis that we've had in the last couple of years has had an impact on the meetings industry. These are figures from MPI, Meetings Professionals International. That's an organisation where meeting professionals, event organisers, meeting planners, it's a bit like the PSA, but for the people on the other side of the equation, as it were, the people who book us. And this is looking at the graph is showing you the percentage of meeting planners who were going to spend more money on meetings in that particular year. So in 2006, 50% of meeting planners were planning to spend more money on meetings than in the previous year. And as you can see, 2007 and then 2008, it fell away dramatically. It's gone up a little bit in 2009, and the figures for 2010 are roughly the same. I think it's about 40%, so it's a slight increase, almost back to 2007 levels. But when you ask those meeting organisers and events planners, where is this extra money going to be spent, it is not going to be spent on speakers. All of this extra cost and spend that they're planning to provide is going to be spent almost entirely on web marketing. And the reason for that is that the numbers of people attending events has gone down over the last few years. And so what they're trying to do is get attendance up by spending the extra money that they do have available in their budgets on getting people to come to their events. So they're not planning to spend more on speakers, they're not planning to do more spending with us. And one particular study for the pharmaceutical sector, which obviously is a massive area for speaking. In fact, several years ago, when I did a lot of work in the pharmaceutical sector, there was a book that was produced 4 times a year. And this book was something like 600 or 700 pages of A4 colour, and all it was a list of all the medical meetings that were happening around the world in the following 3 to 6 months. And associated with that list, all the kinds of things you could do on your holiday there. There are so many medical meetings going on around the world that there's the opportunity for a publisher to produce a quarterly book of 600 pages, all in colour, advertising holiday options to the doctors who are going to attend those meetings. So consequently, there's a huge amount of expenditure on pharmaceutical meetings all around the world. But a study on the pharmaceutical sector has recently shown that they plan to cut their speaker budgets by a whopping 75%. So not only do they plan to spend less money on speakers, but it means they are looking for fewer professional speakers, people who demand money from them when they can probably get speakers from hospitals and the medical world itself, medical research world, who will speak for nothing. And consequently, they are under huge pressure to cut their budgets. So all the people working in the pharmaceutical sector meetings are looking to spend less money on us. And one other thing that the MPI study discovered was that procurement departments are now having a much greater say in the booking of speakers. In the past, it might have been the event organizer themselves who decided whether or not a speaker would be booked, or it may have been the marketing department or some other department within the company, even the chief executive's department. But now the finance department is having the final say. So companies are having a much greater eye on the cost of speakers, and so that's clearly having an influence on whether or not they book us, and if they do book us, how much they want to pay for us. So one of the things that this research shows us is huge financial economic pressures upon those of us who are in the speaking world. There are lots of other changes that are happening to the world of speaking as well. Those economic pressures not only mean that things like the pharmaceutical sector are looking to cut the cost of individual speakers, but they're also meaning that they're organising fewer events. So instead of maybe doing one event a quarter, they might be doing one event a year now, which means that there are fewer speaking slots. You know, if they were doing 4 events a year, they may be looking for, say, 4 speakers at each event, so they've got 16 slots for speakers like you and me. If they're only doing 1 meeting a year, that's down to only 4 speaking slots. So there's a real issue with the numbers of meetings that are being produced. And the meeting events industry is saying that the actual number of meetings that's being organised is falling dramatically. Massive reduction in the actual number of meetings. The meetings themselves are also being shorter for obvious economic reasons. So instead of having to put people up in a hotel, they can put people up, people can travel for 1 day. Instead of having to stay for 2 or 3 days for a big conference, they're trying to do them now all in 1 day. So instead of needing 3 days worth of speakers or 2 days worth of speakers, they only now need 1 day's worth of speakers. That not only reduces their speaker budget, but it reduces their hotel budget, the actual event budget itself. And so the size of meetings is being dramatically impacted as well. Meetings that I used to do that were 3 or 4 day events are now half-day events in one particular example. And so people are doing much shorter meetings. They're also under not only economic pressure for travel costs, but they're under pressure from the green lobby and also from governments, who are now fining companies if they spend too many carbon miles. And consequently, what's happening now is that many companies are organising local meetings rather than international meetings. So instead of organising a meeting where they've got all their staff to travel from either all over the country or all over the world to a particular event, what they're doing is organising meetings at their various venues. So if you are a big multinational, instead of having a major sales conference where you bring all your sales staff together, say to Barcelona from all over the world, that has a green impact and also an impact on your fines for spending too many carbon miles, having too big a carbon footprint. So what those companies now are doing are having smaller meetings, but one for the people in Spain, one for the people in Germany, one for the people in France, one for the people in England, and so on. That is changing the nature of those meetings. It's cheaper for them to, say, fly a speaker around 5 or 6 venues than it is to fly everybody in to one venue where they get the speaker once. Now that means that we get 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 bookings instead of 1, but it also means that the kind of events that we're going to are much different. Instead of being an event where there might be 1,000 people, we're going to events where there may be less than 100. So the meetings are more local, but they're also smaller, and that's changing the nature of the expectation that the companies have on us, because for a meeting of 100 people, they wouldn't expect to pay anywhere near the fees that they expect to pay for somebody who's going to speak to an audience of 2,000-3,000 at some big convention. And so consequently, the kind of fees are under pressure. Even though you might get the gig 6 times, you might not make up the fee that you would get for doing a major convention. So consequently, all these kind of changes happening to the meeting sector are a real problem for those of us who earn our money by speaking at events. Now, I noticed that a few of you have joined the webinar in the last few minutes, and really just to set the scene of where we've got to so far, and just to kind of summarize for those who've been with us since the beginning, that what I'm looking at here is the kind of changes that are happening to the speaking industry and the meeting industry, and looking at what that means for us. The biggest impact so far that I've spoken about is the economic impact, which is having a dramatic change on the kind of meetings that are organised, the frequency with which they're organised, and the kind of spending that the meetings industry is planning to do, and where they are planning to increase their money, their spend. What they're planning to spend it on is largely marketing and getting more people to attend their events. All of this means that there's pressure on the funding available for us as speakers for events, and the kind of events that we're expected to speak at is changing in its character, and consequently the way the customers view us is also changing, which is impacting upon their value judgments that they make, and therefore the fees that we can charge. However, it's not all bad, it's not all doom and gloom. Some things actually don't change. There are, as far as I think, you might disagree, but I think there are 3 essential requirements for speakers. They all begin with the letter E, so they're nice and easy to remember. I think every speaker should provide entertainment of some kind, and by that I don't mean magic or singing or dancing or any of those kind of things. What I mean is that you entertain the audience by the true meaning of the word entertainment, which means triggering people's emotions. So you make them happy if you want to, or you make them think, or you make them angry, or you make them sad, or you make them have some kind of emotional response to what you're saying. In other words, there's got to be some emotional component to what you're providing. You also need to engage. You've got to really connect to your audience, whatever you're doing. And clearly this is really difficult for me at the moment because I can't see you. You could all be in your pajamas. One of you could be picking your nose, and another one could be left the room to go make a coffee and isn't listening at the moment. So it's really difficult for speakers at a distance to try and engage with the audience. But we do need to engage with our audience, as you know. And the other thing is that we need to be experts. The tagline of the PSA itself is experts who speak, and meeting planners say that what they're really looking for is expertise. This is the #1 thing on their list. Engagement is something they want, and entertainment is a nice to have as far as they're concerned, but they really want experts in their particular field. So if you can provide entertainment, engagement and expertise, I think you're always going to get work. But the real problem nowadays is how much are you going to provide to your customers in return? What's their return on investment in you? This is a big question that many people are asking now in the meetings industry. In the past, having an event with professional speakers, whether it was a small event or a big event, all that they wanted was the audience to have a good time. And they'd have their annual sales conference, or they'd have some kind of internal event, and as long as the audience went away happy, that's all that really mattered. And in fact, the sheets, the feedback sheets, of course, were only ever happy sheets. Did you enjoy the event? Did you enjoy the speaker? And we all went away and had our egos polished, and we were all very happy and they were very happy. And the meeting planners used to say that the only thing they were really interested in was somebody who could fill the spot, keep the audience engaged and make their client happy. That's not the case anymore. Clients are saying, what's the bottom line? How much am I going to make extra in profit as a result of this speaker? In other words, we need to prove our value. What is the value that you provide to your audience in financial terms? What are they going to get as a result of listening to you or being at one of your events, or for you turning up to do a workshop or whatever it is? what are they going to get out of it? And I don't mean get in terms of knowledge or get in terms of skills. What is that knowledge or skills that you're transferring? What's that going to mean to their bottom line? What are they going to do in terms of profit? What's going to happen to their business as a direct result of you doing whatever it is you do? And that's a question that many meeting organizers are now being forced to ask, because their clients are asking them. And if it's an internal meeting, the chief executive wants to know what's going to happen. What's going to happen to my bottom line? It means that you've really got to have some kind of value contract with your customers. And it really starts before you even speak. It starts with things like questionnaires and surveys and doing analysis, even doing some research on the business, providing them with stuff they read in advance, whether that's a blog or a special website or whatever it is, but something that they can tangibly get to grips with before the event itself. And for the people who are booking you, they're going to want to have evidence that you provide a return on the investment that they're having in you. So that could be interviews that they have with your previous clients, or it could be case studies where you've been to an event, you've done something, and a particular client has achieved something as a direct result of your intervention. Or there could be research-based data that you have which show that you provide a real investment, return on the investment. But it's not just that they want. They want to know that your speaking event is only part of it, that they want an ongoing relationship with you as the provider of the knowledge, as the expert in your field. So whether that's through a special blog for them, or through a Facebook page or a particular website, or whether it's by you sending printed material to them every month, or whether it's you providing special articles for them, their intranet, or whatever it is, what they're looking for is not just you to turn up at an event, but for you to provide information that is there for them after the event as well. So they want this ongoing relationship where you also follow up on everything. So continued support after the event. So what it means is that speaking is no longer just speaking. Speaking is a component within a whole load of other information provision to a particular audience. So what I'd like you to think of for a moment is, what have you been doing perhaps with your business over the last few months? What have you done that is different? What are you doing now in your business that you didn't do maybe a year ago? Are you providing things like a special email follow-up to particular customers, or are you providing speaking as a small component in a massive delivery of knowledge in printed form? Where does speaking fit within? When I spoke to people at the London chapter about this, many of them were doing many of the things that I've already spoken about, and that speaking had no longer become the sole focus of their business. It was just a component in the delivery of knowledge and information. So if you've got any examples of like that, or things that you've done, then perfectly happy to put them on the public chat area if you've got any examples. But a number of speakers are doing many of these things. And there is another component that's causing the changes to speaking, and one of them is technology. Businesses can conduct meetings online. Hello, here we are online right now. So we can deliver knowledge online to live audiences. I was at a conference in London earlier this year, and two speakers, both members of the NSA, the National Speakers Association of the United States, presented there via Skype, and they were up on the big screen. One was in his hotel room because he was at another event, and another was back in his office. It meant that the conference organisers were able to have two big named speakers at their event without having to pay any travel or accommodation expenses. So they've been able to reduce the cost of their event, but still have these big name speakers at their event via online technology. But the technology is having another impact as well. Not only can big name speakers get more gigs, in fact one of them did 2 in one day because he was doing them both from his hotel room whilst he was with a client. So he'd got 2 speaking gigs and a day with a client, all thanks to Skype. So they can take more business than they used to take. So instead of doing, some of these big name speakers would have done 100 gigs a year. Instead of doing that, they were able to do many more events. And if you're a meeting organizer, you couldn't get a big name speaker in the past because they would only do their 80 or 100 gigs a year, and therefore they would be traveling the rest of the time. They'd be difficult to get. Now they can do it all via Skype. It means you can get them the same day as another client. So that means that that's hitting upon the potential for other speakers, because you're competing now on a much more level playing field with these big name speakers, and they can take the gigs away from less well-known speakers. The other thing that technology does, of course, is that it can help you events organizers find out about you and your competitors. In the past, if they wanted a speaker, what they could do was, ask a bureau or ask somebody else for the name of a speaker, and they would make the booking, and that's about as much research as they did. It was, who do you know who can do it? They seem the right person, let's book them. Now, of course, they get a name and they go online to find out about that name. Do they really know what they're talking about? Are they really experts at what they're doing? Which means that if you haven't got a massive online presence, unfortunately, you might not get the bookings, because events organizers will probably or possibly be able to find out more about your competition than you, and consequently they go, oh well, you're not as well known as them. It's a fairly brutal way of them finding out, but unfortunately it means that event organizers can now find out more about you. They're much more savvy in their booking. So technology is providing both opportunities and threats. Good to see that a couple of you are typing away on the right hand side there and providing some good examples of things that you're doing. Pricing is something that you've mentioned, but I'm not really going to cover that in this presentation, other than to say that if you do some of the things that I'm suggesting a bit later on, I think that you might be able to double your prices again, Andy. Well, that would be good, wouldn't it? So technology is having an impact, but it's not the only thing. I was at the annual meeting of the Society of Authors, of which I'm a member, and one of the things that was apparent there was that the royalties that authors get are falling. The competition for book pricing, with all these 50% off and all this kind of stuff that major retailers are providing, means that the availability, the size of royalties has gone down, and there were authors who would earn a living as book authors, many of them, say, writing textbooks or academic books, and those there were some business authors who were able to write several business books and earn enough money just from the publication of those books. Their royalties have gone down now, and consequently their income's gone down, and one of the things the Society of Authors was recommending was that those authors with books should go out and speak and earn fees from speaking. Now, of course, we know as speakers that if you have a book, that's great, because that helps you gain speaking gigs. But now authors who previously were not on the speaking circuit are now speaking, because that's the only way they can top up their falling income from book royalties. There's